Pretty much a flat performance all round, but when you actually look closer at the top 40 index, Goldfields at the bottom of the top 40, down 2.4%. Harmony also shedding ground. Those gold miners, which I know your favourites, coming under pressure today.
Yeah, a very quiet day in the market. I think you said 7 billion. We should be doing 10 or 12 with the US not awake, not happening. President's Day there, not a lot of activity. I think the gold miners are getting hit. The gold price was actually moving higher, some $10 or $12 up. The rand was moving stronger. I think people are saying that the gold bulls are saying two things. Firstly, we've had the good results. They've come out. We now know that. They got good numbers. And then where are we going to see the spurt from gold? If we get a deal from Greece this evening, and indications are probably we will, and the like, where's gold going to get its sudden next big move from? And then that turns to, well, gold miners perhaps under a bit of pressure.
So on the other end, platinum is doing quite well today. We had Amplats up almost 2%, Lonmin gaining around 1.4%, Implats is up 0.7%. Saying that the company is also going to rehire all the fired workers because of the illegal strike action. That company receiving a lot of negative sentiment and a lot of bad news. But both stocks, Amplats and Implats, with regards to their results, they're facing the same issues, stoppages and cost pressures.
They absolutely are, although Anglo-Plat's cost pressures are about 2,000 Rand an ounce more than Implats. That's quite significant. They're at about 13,500, Implats about 11,500. Yeah. But it's a tough space to be in. And again, you said, as you said, platinum was doing fairly well. Platinum driven again by the news out of China, the data out of the US last week, which was fairly positive, and a sense that, you know what, we're probably not going to collapse in a heap, and therefore platinum demand is there. Anglo-Plat's also stories on the wires coming out of Deutsche Bank saying that they don't expect Anglo to completely get rid of Anglo-Plat. Rather, they would probably look to close certain mines and certain shafts to try and get costs under control.
And of course, that is naturally going to push up the platinum price, isn't it, if we actually start to see supply constraints, Simon?
That's exactly that. The whole thing with platinum and why it's an interesting space in South Africa. They're dominating the global supply chain in the space, and therefore, if they shut mines, it automatically creates a bit of a supply. And it's why I would be more bullish on platinum than platinum stocks themselves, particularly with the Section 54s, particularly if we start seeing some mines close down. I think platinum price can move nicely. Of course, Rand might offset that. If the Rand then goes to 7, Rand platinum might go nowhere, but the miners are having a very, very tough time of it. We had more news out of Zimbabwe over the weekend around Implats exposure there. Minister saying about the indigenization project, about how they want Implats out. It's not official policy, but it's still not good for them.
But there's a lot of optimism, though, that Implats has actually made quite a lot of headway in Zimbabwe, and the fact that they have built quite a strong relationship.
Absolutely, I think they have. You can see it. I mean, it's a line item in their income statement and expenses. There, they say there was $10 million in Zimbabwe. I also think the flip side is that they've been sweating that asset as much as possible. I think they've been getting to try and get as much platinum out of Zimbabwe as they can in this area of uncertainty. I think there's a lot of talk there. At the end of the day, a deal will be reached. Of course, the Zimbabwean government wants 51%, and Implats is saying absolutely no chance. Then there's going to be a meeting somewhere, probably closer to the 10 or 15%.
So Woolies came out with results last week. The stock is down 0.5%. ShopRite is down around 0.4%. Set to come out with results tomorrow. Both these companies are actually taking market share from Pick n Pay. So give us an indication of what's going to happen in the food retail space and whether you have exposure to any of these stocks.
Both, Woolies and ShopRite. They've both done spectacularly well. They're both off 52-week and all-time highs. They both had very strong runs. The results from Woolies and the updates from ShopRite certainly showed that their growth is starting to mature, I suppose, and we could say slow would be another way of putting it. Gina was mentioning before I came on air around food inflation. That's certainly going to help them. A little bit of food inflation.
She's talking about 8% rises across the board, in fact. It's
a terrifying number. And if you saw the Pioneer Food update from last week, where they're talking 15 to 20% at the base level, that's going to flow through the retailers. That gives them a bit of pricing power. We've seen the consumer out there swiping their credit cards and spending their money. I still think that there's growth there. Certainly, we're not going to see the levels of growth. ShopRite's up 150-odd% since its lows of a year and a half ago. So Woolies is up about 300% from those lows. The growth is going to slow. So if you haven't actually bought the stock until now,
do you perhaps suggest to hold off?
I would hold off. I think that they need to grow into their PEs, either by getting earnings growing with a stagnant share price or by having earnings growing and pulling back in the share price.
Okay, so the point is that industrials have actually performed really well. And this is why the top 40 index hasn't actually hit record highs the same way that the JSE All Share has. There's been a lag effect. Are resources going to catch up, given the fact that they do have a very large weighting, the biggest weighting in the top 40 index?
Resources are well behind. They're 30-odd% off their all-time highs. Industrials have been hitting high after high. Financials are close to their all-time highs. They've got a lot of catching up. I don't think they're going to suddenly put that 30% on. That high from May of 2008 was really elevated levels, really bubble territory in many senses. But I look at a lot of the stocks in that space, and certainly the prices I see in them, I think, are still attractive. And we look at companies like Exxaro, we look at BHP Billiton, Anglo, companies like Sasol. 400 Rand, Sasol's no longer massively cheap, but it's certainly a company that I think at 400 Rand is offering value.
Okay, let's touch on Transnet. The company plans to borrow 100 billion Rand over 7 years. CapEx spend, we know that Kumba Iron Ore has actually had a better year from an efficiency perspective, given the fact that things are getting quicker to the ports. In fact, across the board, all companies that are using Transnet now, it seems that it's a far more efficient company. 100 billion Rand is a lot though, Simon.
100 billion is huge. Brian Molefe, who was a PIC, moved across, took over at Transnet, really making things happen. The Kumela mine at Kumba Iron Ore got on track 5 months early, in part because Transnet was there 5 months early, which, with all respect to Transnet, is frankly unheard of. 100 billion is a giant number, but in terms of their balance sheet, they've got a strong balance sheet. They can afford to take the loan off their balance sheet, and it's certainly its capacity which is needed. It's not building airports or something which you could argue is going to grow into the capacity in the next couple of decades. Those railway lines are needed. When they put them there, when they get those things working, when they get the ports improved, the capacity is there, they will get immediate benefit. So they can do the loans, and there will be immediate trickle down to GDP and listed companies.
Fantastic, Simon. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.